A short while after Spies in Disguise was released, something terrible happened to everyone in the world. Something that I personally describe as the closest thing we got to World War III. That something is the coronavirus, also known as COVID-19, a newly discovered fatal illness. It was found in Wuhan, China in December of 2019 before it shortly began to spread to some unlucky people visiting China and brought it back with them to whatever country they hailed from, thus dooming everyone on Earth to potential death. Shortly afterward, health specialists demanded that everyone take precaution and stay indoors at all times, while also avoiding physical contact with other people at a distance of 5 feet. This effect had a major change in the world, like how schools were forced to close and continue the education of students via webcams to class. The then US President, Donald Trump, and his administration ended up trying to undermine the severity of the epidemic, which led to a huge fallout of the economy. And what's one of the worst things, apart from the demise of millions of innocent people, is how this pandemic affected the movie industry, in both animated and live-action forms. Because a movie theater is one of the most social-based locations ever known, the people who worked in movie industries suffered quite a lot. They either had to delay their movies, in most cases to a straight-up year, until this whole epidemic has been resolved, like the Minions sequel Rise of Gru from Illumination, which had to be pushed back for 2 straight years or release the movies on an online streaming platform. Some animated movies that got this kind of treatment are 3 Pixar movies, Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, DreamWorks' Trolls, World Tour, some Sony Animated Pictures films like The Mitchells vs. the Machines, Vivo, The Fourth Hotel Transylvania, and the new CGI Scooby-Doo movie. How was Blue Sky affected by this? Well, in the words of Whitey from 8 Crazy Nights,
unfortunately, this fairy tale doesn't have a happy ending.
On February 9th, 2021, Disney announced that it was closing Blue Sky Studios 2 months later in April because COVID's continued economic impact would affect all of its businesses, and running a 3rd feature animation studio would be unsustainable given the circumstances. Because of this, production on some upcoming movies like animated film adaptations of the webcomic Nimona and the Anubis Tapestry were canceled. However, Disney was merciful enough to let Blue Sky put the finishing touches on an Ice Age-inspired miniseries called Scrat Tales, where Scrat adopts a young squirrel and the typical shenanigans with the squirrel would follow suit and would release it on their streaming website, Disney Plus, and wouldn't be released until a year later on April 13th, 2022. In the final episode of the series, Nut the End concluded the end credits with a parting message from the Blue Sky animators. Scrat was the first character to appear in Blue Sky's first movie, Ice Age. Like him, we were reaching for something that might have been unattainable, yet time after time, both we and Scrat have managed to get our arms around versions of that elusive acorn. Unfortunately, it's not possible to hold on to anything forever. We've had more fun bringing our movies to life than anyone should be allowed. We hope you've been able to feel some of that joy. Thank you, from the bottom of our Blue Sky collective hearts, for being with us all those years. So, does this mean we will never hear from Blue Sky ever again?
Yes and no.
What do I mean? Well, it would seem that most studios like Disney are trying to keep the legacy of Blue Sky alive, but through their own means. And there's no greater example of that than with the designated 6th Ice Age movie, The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. The film is about Crash and Eddie causing an avalanche that destroys a hangout the herd built. The herd then mocks them for not being mature or independent enough to look after themselves. To prove otherwise, Crash and Eddie decide to leave the herd during the night and end up back in the dinosaur world where they encounter their old friend Buck Wild, who is currently trying to stop a dinosaur with a big brain named Orson from taking over the dinosaur world, and they soon get help from a prehistoric skunk named Z, while Ellie and the herd try to find them after finding out that they're gone. When Walt Disney Pictures decided to create the 6th Ice Age film, the people there decided to make it without the need of Blue Sky, although the movie was originally produced by 20th Century Studios and 20th Century Animation before it was moved to Walt Disney Pictures. The studio that animated the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild was the Canadian animation studio, Bardell Entertainment. Originally, the movie was supposed to be a TV show spin-off of Crash and Eddie, and their original actors, Sean William Scott and Josh Peck, respectively, were going to reprise their roles. Also, when Blue Sky was still on its legs, the filmmakers there felt that having a sixth Ice Age film could potentially redeem the franchise and came up with the idea of bringing back humans from the first movie, including the baby character Roshan, and make viewers understand why they fell in love with the Ice Age films to start with, and hope to end the series off on a high note. Obviously, this did not happen. Since this Ice Age was on a much smaller scale compared to the first 5 films, it's inevitable that it wouldn't be treated as if it was a blockbuster that deserved to be on the big screen. For example, apart from Simon Pegg reprising his role as Buck, a majority of the cast has been replaced by either voice actors like Vincent Tong voicing Crash, or low-key actors like Skylar Stone voicing Diego. One interesting thing to note is that the music composer of the movie, Badu Senner, was a protege of John Powell, who, if you've been paying attention to my videos, was the composer of Ice Ages 2, 3, and 4. Senner made his score of Buck Wild incorporate some of the music from Powell's work on the franchise. Now, to anyone who saw the film, you might be wondering why Scrat didn't appear in it. Well, that's because Scrat was still the property of Fox, and since it wasn't made by a Fox-based studio, the people at Disney had no legal right to feature Scrat. Eventually, the movie was released on Disney Plus on January 28, 2022, and people hated it. Yeah, I know, big shock, since movies that have a video sequel do not have a good rap whatsoever. It got a 19% on Rotten Tomatoes, and critics like Courtney Howard from Variety said that the movie focuses on major characters from the Ice Age films rather than Buck himself. The biggest reason why people hated the movie was because, at this point in the franchise, Crash and Eddie were the most disliked characters because of how annoying they are, and giving them their own spin-off did not do them any favors. Anyways, what are my thoughts on the movie? I hate it just like everyone else. The one thing I dislike most about this picture is the overlong banter between Buck and Orson. Most of it just takes up a majority of time. The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild is a prime example of what happens when a franchise has been going on for too long. So much so that it may as well have been a TV show because Disney has plans to release more and more movies from the Ice Age franchise, alongside a third Rio movie. But since that won't be for another while, let's just stick to the first 5. Circling back to what I said about Scrat, days after the release of Buck Wild, Disney ended up losing the rights of Scrat to fashion artist Ivy Supersonic, real name Ivy Silberstein, who claimed to have originally created Scrat under the name Scrat, and also pitched the character to Fox, but the studio turned her down. Ivy also claimed that Fox's documents truly identified the character as Scrat, even though her creation wasn't saber-toothed. Ivy was offered a settlement of $300,000 by Fox, but she rejected it and subsequently lost in court, which later went to appeal. Ivy later won a partial summary judgment from the Trademark Trial and Appeal Board in a reverse suit, in which Fox attempted to stop her from registering the trademark Scrat. But let's move on from that, shall we? Remember what I said before about that Nimona adaptation being cancelled? Well, all that has gone away when it was actually made. Set in a futuristic-looking monarchy, a man named Ballister Blackheart longs to be a knight, despite royal protocol saying that all knights must be of noble blood. When the queen of the place attempts to forego tradition and knight Ballister anyhow, she is suddenly killed when the sword that was being used to knight Ballister suddenly becomes a gun, and as a result, Ballister is framed as a murderer. Seeking to exonerate himself, he befriends and joins forces with a shape-shifting anarchist wannabe named Nimona to find the real killer, and Ballister ends up discovering that this rabbit hole goes way deeper because the queen's death is connected to the enigmatic director, and that Nimona has a special relationship with the founder of the kingdom, Glorith. Now you might be wondering why this movie was made even though Blue Sky went under. Well, that's because the film was picked up by Annapurna Pictures on April 11th, 2022, with DNEG Animation taking over the movie's production. But anyway, getting into how this movie came to be. Back when it was still going to be released from Blue Sky, the film rights from the original webcomic were acquired by Fox in 2015 and was going to be directed by Patrick Osborne, who previously created the Disney short film Feast, and it was planned to be released in 2020. However, it had to be delayed due to the Disney-Fox merger and the pandemic, until Blue Sky was shut down, and Disney decided to shelf the movie after people worked on it for 10 months. Some former Blue Sky workers claimed that this pushback was due to a kiss scene between Ballister and his boyfriend, Ambrosius Goldenloim. Soon, though, as said before, Annapurna Pictures and D&EG Animation were handed to complete the film and made a deal with the streaming service Netflix to release it on their platform in 2023. There were some ideas that didn't make it into the movie, like how the director was supposed to be secretly bald and Ambrose was going to be Caucasian and his hair would be longer, just like in the original book. Speaking of, as with any movie-to-book adaptation, the filmmakers issued some changes from the book. Ballister's last name was changed from Blackheart to Boldheart, and he and Ambrose were both modeled after their voice actors, Riz Ahmed and Eugene Lee Yang, respectively. Speaking of, as if the people who worked on the movie must have picked up, this was Yang's first vocal performance in an animated feature and continued the Blue Sky tradition of giving some actors their first vocal role in a movie. And this has been bugging me, but some of you might have noticed that I didn't give this kind of credit to the first Ice Age. Well, now I am pointing out that they had actor Goran Visenjic do his first and to date only animated role as the villain Soto. Just putting that out there to anyone who noticed it as well. Going back to Nimona's production, the design of the movie was influenced by artists Avend Earl and Charlie Harper, using both of their styles to combine both the medieval and future world so that it would mirror the present world. The animators chose their styles as Earl was partial to fluidity and Harper was partial to a geometric and simple shape base, and they had to convey both their ideologies. They were also taken to incorporate the original web novel's style too, including circles for Nimona, squares for Ballister, and diamonds for the Institute. And each shape is a reflection on their stance in the movie, and Nimona's shape-shifting was made into an explosion of emotions.
Well, I guess there's only one question left.
What's that?
Can a shark dance?
Can a shark dance? Watch me.
In May 2023, about a month before the film was released, it was confirmed that Christoph Beck was the composer of the film's music score, and American rapper K-Flay performed the original song T-Rex for the film's soundtrack. Aidan Sugano serves as production designer on the film and said that the film had sci-fi medieval fantasy, knights, lasers, monsters, dragons, dramatic lighting, and style. The film had a limited theatrical run on June 23, 2023 before it was released on Netflix worldwide 1 week later on June 30th. The movie received many positive reviews from critics and viewers alike, earning a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, with some critics praising how fun and energetic the film was, alongside the LGBTQ+ representation between Ballister and Ambrose. The movie also went on to be nominated for some awards, like Best Animated Film, Best Vocal Motion Capture Performance, and Best Animated Female for the voice of Nimona, Chloe Grace Moretz, Best Animated Feature, and as of this writing, it is still pending for some other awards. As for what I think of the movie, I found it to be very good. I loved the message about how you shouldn't be afraid to question authority, and how judging others for being different is going to come back to haunt you. Nimona is a prime example of what Blue Sky was capable of, and how if they managed to thrive past the pandemic, we could have seen how this movie would affect their reputation. Well, everyone, thank you for watching these videos. But like the studio itself, it's time this history came to a close. I'm Shane Vance, and I'll see you in the next animated history.
Sometimes everything is wrong.